Well, all right. Welcome back. Today we have a very, very special guest. We're honored and excited to have the legendary executive, scout, GM, president, you name it. This guy's done it all. Mr. Neil Smith. Thank you for coming on the show, Neil. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and it's an honor to be on with you guys and talk hockey. I mean, as Wayne Gretzky once said, how hard can it be when you get to talk hockey all day?
That's right. We got a lot to cover with Neil today. He's got a storied career. Um, as far as I'm concerned, you should be considered for the Hall of Fame. I don't want to put you on the spot, but my humble opinion, you've been a winner everywhere you've gone, everything you've touched, everywhere you've gone. You're not without your hurdles, but you've overcome it all. Uh, they should be looking in your direction one of these days, and I sure hope they do. But you have a very storied career. But right now you're involved in a lot of stuff that's hockey related, and even in the business world, you have your ties to the Islanders and UBS. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on at UBS, and then with your podcast that you have called the NHL Wraparound, which I've listened to a few times, and I really like it. You and Vic Morin do a great job on that. Um, Tell us about your UBS job, what's going on there, and then tell us about the podcast.
Well, I've been very lucky. I started working for UBS in 2017 in Greenville here through a friend of mine, and then I went to New York and I met the higher ups of the big UBS, and of course they were Ranger fans, and they were thrilled to meet me. Said, "Well, what are you doing there? You should be here in New York," and this and that. And then all of a sudden in 2020, I got a call and they said, we're buying the naming rights for the new building at Belmont Park, and we want you to be a big part of it. And I said, well, that's great with me. It's right up my alley. So you know how long it took to build UBS Arena. It actually wasn't that long. It was fairly quick, but and it was during COVID, so it was a tough thing to do. And so since they've opened the building until now, which is 4 years of it, I've been a liaison to the building and to the clients and to the employees that come to the Islander games. And that's my whole job, is just to be at the Islander games and meet people, talk to people, hopefully make their experience a little bit better by, giving them some insights that I might have. A lot of people that go to the game up in those boxes aren't really hardcore hockey fans. They're there because they got invited and they're enjoying it, but they don't know a whole lot about it. So to educate them a little bit is fun for me.
Well, I also read, I forget where I read it, but with regard to what you do there, you're there with people, you're dealing with clients and all, and every so often you might get a little downtime. I heard, and the way it was described was Neil Smith sits down and feverishly is taking notes. You still get into that kind of thing when you're there and you have a minute?
Yeah, no. When I'm watching the game, I still watch it the same way I watch it all my life. During my professional career, I really look to see who's playing well, who has a chance. How good are the Islanders? How's their power play, penalty killing? The other teams. I don't have a dog in the fight, so it's really can be fun because you don't go out of the building upset if they lose, and you don't go out thrilled if they win. I'm happy for my friends that are Islander fans up there that I've known over these 4 years. I really am. I'm happy for them that they get the happiness out of the wins. But I really don't cheer either way for anybody. I just like to study the game like I always have.
So I'd imagine that, though, being in that position, it has to help you with the NHL wraparound. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, it definitely does. It definitely is helping me, and I feel part of the NHL by being at all the games. I watch everything that's on TV, of course, like tomorrow night, like we all will be watching Florida and Edmonton. But it really helps because there's nothing like being at an NHL game. You don't see it the same on TV. you feel involved when you're at the game. I mean, I'm sure the fans feel the same way. They feel involved in the game when you're a fan, when you go to the building. If you stay home and watch it on TV, you're not involved. So, yeah, that's really helped me have a better understanding of all the teams. And I also have dinner a lot of nights with the GM of the opposing team coming in if I know him. He comes to the UBS club and we have dinner together, and that's fun for me too. So, and then I talk to Butch and Brendan Burke and Shannon Hogan and whoever else is there doing TV, and that's a lot of fun too, because I know Butch all the way back from 1980.
And that's something that we're going to want to touch on later too. You were right there when that first cup 45 years ago was won. But starting out in your hockey career, it's been said that you come from a hockey family. Then I found out a little later on that even your mom played hockey. So tell us about the hockey family that you come from and your mom, and how that led to Neil Smith making it all the way to the NHL.
Well, it's actually been a hockey mom and not a hockey family, to be honest with you. I mean, my grandfather emigrated from England, at the beginning of the 20th century, like a lot of British people, and they immigrated to Winnipeg, and that's where my mother was born. And my grandfather, really liked hockey when he saw it, because it reminded him of soccer back in England, and he became a hockey coach, and he coached the women's teams. And my mother was quite a good player in the 30s on the Canadian Olympic teams and Canadian women's hockey. And so when my father was a musician, and he would be out playing piano on Saturday nights in a band, and I'd sit with my mother and watch Hockey Night in Canada. And this is when I was really young. And I remember my mother saying to people, well, one thing about Neil, he likes to sit and watch hockey with me. And I took that in. And, when your parent says something like sort of brags about you a little bit like that, like you think, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I mean, she likes this. Well, and then unfortunately for me and for my mom especially, my dad died suddenly when I was 10. And that made me grab onto my mom's coattails pretty hard, because you're frightened at that age when you suddenly lose a parent. You can't imagine that they're not going to live forever when you're a little kid. And so I got to be honest with you, that my mother and I had a hockey bond until the day she died. I mean, all the way through, and she lived till 92, thankfully. She got to be at the Stanley Cup game in New York. She attended a number of Islander games, of course, during those years, and a lot of Detroit games when I was with the Red Wings. And she was, I remember Mike Richter saying to me one time, because it said, Neil, your mom, like, she really knows the game. Like, it's unreal. Like, she can talk the game. Like, she'll say to one of our players, they just weren't forechecking hard enough, or something like, something to that effect. My mom really liked hockey. And I think that quite often when you are, a single parent, a mother and the son especially, there's been a lot of very successful sons from single mothers, because I think that psychologically they instill in you that you can do anything you want to do. You're the fair-haired child. You can be anything, and you go on to do great things. And maybe that's why I was lucky enough to be able to do what I've done in my career.
That level of support that comes with it catapults you into great things. It definitely worked in your situation. It's a great story. From there, though, when did you start realizing that you were going to take hockey and try to make the pros, or at least in junior and in college and all that? When did that click for you?
Well, I played college hockey at Western Michigan, and I was quite good there. I was a pretty good college player for that time, and for that time. I wasn't a tough guy, and I was 6'2", and in that era of the 70s, as you remember, that was tough. This is nothing today compared to what it was like back then. And so if you're 6'2" and a defenseman and you're not really tough or a fighter, and I was neither, it's tough to make it to the pros. I got drafted by the Islanders, as you said, and I went to training camp in 78. Didn't really do very well. A great story is I went from the Islanders training camp in 78 to the Indianapolis Racers training camp because my college coach was assistant coach to Pat Stapleton. And at that training camp was a young kid, 17 years old, Wayne Gretzky, at his first pro training camp.
Wow.
And so that was something. I used to remind him of that quite a bit, that I was at training camp with him when he was 17. But so I really knew I wasn't cut out to be a player, and I wanted to be in the NHL. And I think, Steve, part of the thing that was in the back of my head was, what's mom going to think? Like, I got to be in hockey. I have to be in hockey because that was a thing that we shared together, like that we talked about all the time. And I probably thought if I wasn't in hockey, I'd be disappointing her, which I'm sure I wasn't, like, because she wasn't that type of person. But
that feeling
in my mind, then that feeling was there in my mind. So by hook or by crook, I got that. It started off with the Islanders in 1980 when I asked Jimmy D, I said, is there something I can do for the Islanders? I said, how about if I just go to the Garden and watch Ranger games and do reports for Al about the opponents and so on. And sure enough, I found myself luckily in 80-81 with an unpaid pro scouting job for Al Arbour.
Unpaid. How does that happen? An unpaid scouting job in the NHL?
Well, because back then it wasn't the same. It wasn't like now when they were taking a chance. I mean, having me do it, I could have handed in reports that were nonsense. But Al obviously liked what I was doing because he started sending me to Hartford and Boston and Washington and all these places, and they were paying my expenses and meal money and stuff. So I got another funny story is how to survive with this job was I'd get to Washington and I'd land at Reagan, and it was called National Airport back then. And I'd take the subway and a bus or something to get all the way out to where the Cap Center was in Landover, Maryland.
Yeah.
And I could put in for a taxi. So I'd put in for a taxi and get the extra money that, on top. And I do that in Boston and I do that other places. So I guess I was cheating on my expenses, but I had to do it to survive because they weren't paying me. I had to eat. Yeah. So, and as you know, in 81, we beat the Minnesota North Stars for the Cup. And I went into Bill Torrey the next year and said, could I get a full-time job doing this? Like, I'd like to, do it full-time. And he ended up giving me $10,000 to do it the next year, which was 81, 82. And I had a college degree, guys, and everything, but like, I didn't care. I was so happy. Like I was on the moon happy that I could be in the NHL.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thrilled and so proud of the fact that I could work with the Islanders. Like, I mean, this was you didn't know it was going to be a dynasty at that time. You knew that they had already won the cup in 80. And I'd gone from playing in the minors. Now, all of a sudden I'm working with Al Arbour, coach the Stanley Cup team. Like I was like in heaven. So it was a great break for me in my career.
When you first started out there in 1980, they made you like an advanced scout? Like
yes.
Prior to, were you privy to anything that was going on at the time? My biggest thing, when Ray and I grew up down the block from the Coliseum, we're two Uniondale boys, and we lived there. We were there when it was built. We actually lived 2 blocks away and didn't know it until about a month ago from Bob Gukowski.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, he lived
Yeah, Bob lived down the block 20 years before.
But we didn't go to school together. But anyway, the 1980 team, whenever it's talked about, there's the obvious, of course, Nystrom's goal, this kind of thing. And then they always talk about Butch Goring as the final piece to the puzzle. Mm-hmm. Now, I always wanted to know what was the process that led up to that. We all know that the Islanders at the time, they had the big Bossy and Gillies Trache line, Trio Grand, and the big thing was if you shut that line down, you got a good chance of coming out of that series a winner. So the train of thought was obviously we need to do something to make the second line as good as the first or whatever. So when it came to Butch Goring being the guy, were other people considered as well, or was it, no, we want Butch? And how did that all come about?
Well, and you see, and I can't give you an answer to that because that was the year I was playing in the minors. That was 79-80. So I wasn't there. I was there in 80-81. So I got there after that. And I watched the Islanders' Bobby Nystrom's goal in that afternoon game. I was in my basement in Toronto watching it on TV in Toronto. So I wasn't around that. I was friends with Jimmy D, so I heard a lot of stories, but that trade, I wasn't involved in that at all. I mean, I'm not involved is going too lightly. I mean, I was light years away from being around there.
Right. Yeah, that's the one thing I'd like to know one of these days. Talk to somebody and find out when did that spotlight go on Goring to pick him up, because that was the deal of the century. We let go of two good guys that everybody was fan favorites, and but it worked like a charm.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can get Jimmy D on the show one day, and see if he can give us.
I'm sure he'd come on. Billy Harris being traded was the first Islander ever, right?
Yeah.
He was picked first.
Dave Lewis too. He was an original Islander. Those were guys like I was a kid, right? I was probably about 12 years old, and when they made that trade, I was like, "What are they doing?" I had never heard of Butch Goring. I just never did. Right. I probably wasn't following the game close enough. All I knew was like I loved those guys from day one, but man, it definitely made a difference.
I got a good story for you about Butch Goring. I just learned this last season or the season before. So I was sitting with him at dinner, and I said, "How did you get the nickname Butch? Where did that come from?" And he said, "That's not a very good story." He said, "When I was born, my father was in the hospital waiting, and the nurse came out to him, and he didn't know what they had, a boy or a girl, and she said to him, 'Well, you got a Butch.'" And from then on, he's called Butch Goring, and I think his name is Robert.
Robert,
yeah. But that's his whole story. Like, it's not very sexy. He didn't tell me, in any other way. He said it was just the nurse said to his dad, "You got a Butch."
Well, I'll tell you something even as funny, maybe not as funny, but around there. But my wife, I met in 1981. Okay, so we're together a long, long time. I was always a Gillies guy, but I was always a Clark Gillies guy. Ray will tell you. And my wife was her favorite guy was Butchie, right? So I met her in 81, I think, like right after the second cup. And then we hit it off, and she was telling me how she was an Islander fan. So back in the day, you didn't have the jerseys like you had now. You'd go to Herman Sports or something like that, or some kind of cheesy place, and would give you some sweater with with iron-on numbers and everything, right? But I said, I'm going to get her a Butch Goring jersey. So I got her the jersey, and I said to the guy, put 91 on it, and then put Butch. Not thinking that,
And she never wore it.
The jersey that Butch on it. And she looked at thanks a lot. It's somewhere in the mothball somewhere, maybe with that other T-shirt I was telling you about.
You should hang it back there behind you, man, right in between the blue and the white.
Yeah, that is hilarious. That is really.
On it. She's like the furthest thing.
That is really funny. That's really funny.
But you think about that 1980 team, and I did listen to your podcast with Morrow, Tonelli, and the captain, Denny Potvin. And those stories, because as fans, being fans as long as we have been, we lived through it. But to hear their personal experience of it, the locker room stuff, just the way they felt emotionally. I mean, you brought it out of them. I think that was like one of the greatest. And plus, you had three guys on at once, which, that could be tricky. And I enjoyed the hell out of that. I think it was 2 hours long. And I literally set time aside to listen to that. It was just fantastic.
I thought some of the answers were really enlightening to me, and I'm sure to the listeners and watchers, because like Ken Morrow describing how going back up the stairs to your car from that, because the ice level was underneath the ground level, that those stairs got harder and harder every day during the playoffs. They were so tired. And that when Nystrom's goal went in, he said he was just relieved. Do you remember him saying he was just relieved that there was no more practices, no more games.
It's all over.
It's over. Finally, it's over. And, people don't understand that. Like they really don't understand that. And I didn't even get it. I thought it was great. And some of John Tonelli's answers and Dennis Potvin, I love that I got to ask him, what's the one thing you're most proud of in such a storied career that you had? And he said, being the captain of a Stanley Cup team. And that was amazing too. Give me shivers. It's just being the captain of a Stanley Cup team, because he idolized Jean Beliveau, who was the captain of so many Montreal Canadiens Stanley Cup teams.
And then you look at Denny, and like you said, his career was storied. For him to do it 4 times in a row, it's just, and like they bring it up all the time. They go to 20 straight series. They win 19 straight. How do you? I don't think anybody could ever do that again.
I don't think that'll ever be accomplished again.
Not in today's hockey, because they don't have the shackles aren't on the players that have to stay in one team like they were back then. There's no free agency, and that was your career. You were an Islander or a Montreal Canadian or whatever you were, and no, that won't happen. I find it amazing that Florida is on the cusp of a second in a row Stanley Cup, because every year you take losses, right? The guys leave, they cash in, they go get the big money somewhere else. Right. Montour went to Seattle after having a great playoff for Florida last year. Ekman Larsson ended up in Toronto. Stolarz ended up in Toronto. And yet they filled in for those guys and did a really good job there. But that's today. We'll go back to yesterday now.
Yeah.
Well, it's a different way of managing, right? But even back, when in your day, right? But even further back, if you talk about what Bill Torrey had to do, the way the guys just really, there was no free agency at all. Obviously, you were there during the free agency era. And now it's just a different way to try to find ways to keep the teams going. And I think, we'll get into this too, with the Islanders. It's like, where do you find the right type of mind that understands that? Because even somebody that was very successful maybe 15, 20 years ago has to think a lot differently now. They have to adjust. They have to pivot. And there are ways to do it. Like you said, like Florida's, Tampa was there. Florida is getting there. There are teams that are figuring out ways to stay not only competitive, but also win at the higher levels by figuring out how to work the whole free agency thing, the way the contracts are built and everything.
Salary cap.
Salary cap. And all that stuff. It's just like obviously you understand. It's a very different world from where you came from, right?
Oh, absolutely. And we didn't have a salary cap and those things when I was with the Rangers. Obviously not with Detroit or the years with the Islanders. And in some ways, it's in some ways like if you take Chris Drury of the Rangers versus me in the 90s. In some ways, I think it's easier now because there's a salary cap. And in my day with the Rangers, every player that came up, they expected you to get them. Like, just spend whatever it took to because you've got all the money. You can do whatever you want. And that wasn't really true. And you can't buy teams. You can't just go out and sign free agents and that's the way you win the cup. You've got to develop a culture and so on. So it's a difficult job now, but in some ways, I guess it's an easier job because you've got built-in parameters that you can't go around. And so, and if you don't have it, you don't have it. And people realize you've got to rebuild, and they're not holding you accountable for that. When I had to rebuild the Rangers, they didn't want to hear anything about it. Like I told everybody, and I don't want to talk too much Rangers here, but it's my only experience as GM.
That's free. I mean, yeah, it's fine.
But I mean, we built that team through trades. There was no free agency on that team, on that Ranger 94 team. We did it all through, trading and getting fortunate on the deals worked out. But I told everybody, you're going to have to pay for this down the road because you're trading a Monty, Doug Waite, other younger players to get guys that might be able to deliver the Stanley Cup for the first time in 50 years. You're going to have to rebuild it. And then when that time comes, of course, in New York, they're like, get out of here. What are you talking about? You're crappy. You're a hero one day and you're a total village idiot the next in New York. And I mean New York. I don't mean the island. It's not the same. We all know that. So in today's NHL, it is much different. I mean, Chicago, they weren't trying to. Stan Bowman ended up leaving there because of a difficult situation, but the Blackhawks won 3 cups, and then they have to rebuild. They've been terrible for quite a while now. And that's just the way that it goes in this NHL. If you ever get to the mountaintop, you know that you're going to have your turn to go back down again. You have to. It's the way the league is built.
So that's an interesting point, because a lot of Ranger fans say that same thing, that they kind of like sacrificed the future because it was kind of like all in, right, on that 94 team. But if you go back a couple of years and you talk about trading Amonte, right, and a few other guys, Doug Waite, if you go back a couple of years when the Lindros deal was going on and you guys almost had him, there was like an agreement between Lindros's camp and you guys and Lindros's camp in Philly, and you both came to an agreement, and you both had an agreement, and it wound up having to be arbitrated, right, through the NHL. So just curious, couple of years, right, it was like 91, 92. So it's a couple of years before you guys win the cup. How do you think, well, first of all, can you explain the whole situation between the Rangers and Philly and what actually happened? But also, who was really on the block to get Lindros, and how do you think that would have affected the 94 season if you did have him?
I've been asked that a lot, and so the precipice of this whole thing was Quebec Nordiques, and Marcel Aubut was the owner of Quebec Nordiques. They had drafted Lindros. Lindros didn't want to go to Quebec. He said that right from the beginning, and so being the showman that Marcel Aubut was, he waited and waited until the draft was in Montreal. And when the draft was in Montreal, this is where he was going to auction off Lindros. But none of us that were in the bidding for Lindros, meaning knew who was in it. We didn't know what teams were involved. Pierre Paget was the GM. And so you throw your best pitch at them to try to get this guy, because this was the next one. Lindros, we had 99, and then we had 66, and now we're going to have 88. And he's going to be the next generational player. I mean, everybody said it. So can you imagine if we can get him on the Rangers? Like, that's, fantastic. So we did our pitching for him. I did it. And along with the help of Stanley Jaffe, who was Paramount's boss at that time. And they told us, yeah, we're going to move him to you. Well, the next day I get to the draft on the floor of the forum, and Jay Snyder, Ed Snyder's son, who was running the Flyers at the time, said, Neil, don't announce your trade, because he says, we're going to take it to arbitration. I said, what are you talking about? He says, the Lindros trade, don't announce it. I said, well, I don't even know if we've got him or not. They haven't even confirmed it, which they hadn't. They hadn't completely confirmed it. It was all just hocus pocus crap going on. And there was no system in the league either to have the league involved with trades. It was more or less a handshake, and then you called it in. And so they went to the arbitration, and what the agreement was between the three clubs, and Larry Bertuzzi was the arbitrator, that if the question was, had Quebec made a legitimate trade with Philadelphia before the trade with the Rangers by the standards of trades in the National Hockey League, and the Rangers, being us, said if they traded him to Philadelphia before us, Philadelphia should get him, because that's not right. You made a deal and you can't go back on it. So we had this long arbitration. The Rangers were really not very involved. We were there, but we weren't involved. It was really a he said, she said between Quebec Nordiques and Philadelphia Flyers. At the end of the day, as you know, Larry Bertuzzi ruled that they had consummated a trade with the Quebec Nordiques, and so therefore that trade could go forward. And if Philadelphia still wanted to do that, and of course they did, and that's how that trade got done. Now, who was involved? I think Van Beesbroek was in there. I think James Patrick was in there. I think that Doug Waite, I believe, was in there, and I'm not sure if Kovalev was or not. And there was a first-round pick. I don't think Kovalev was involved in it, because he was one of my favorites, and I didn't want to trade him. And then to answer your question, which I've been asked many, many times, if you'd done it, how would that have affected things? Well, the optimists would say, well, maybe you would have won 3 cups. And my answer has always been, I'm just happy we won 1. I'm just, you know what? Like, I got it done. My work was done. Please let me go home now.
I don't think there's anyone else walking the planet who did the last one before you. So
no, Lester Patrick.
You're very rare.
Lester Patrick did the first 3. Did the first 3, and I was able to do the 4th one. And I don't know if you guys and I are going to see another one in our lifetime.
Yeah, who the hell knows?
Yeah.
I was just curious. And I know, Steve, we said 2 at a time. And I'm just going to follow up. I was just curious if you feel that if you made that trade, would you guys have won in '94 anyway? Because you still had Richter and you still had most of that team. You did trade off some of those pieces, though, to get some guys to help you win in '94. Or do you think maybe it would have taken a year or 2 after that? I was just curious about that.
Yeah, and I really don't know, because as you said, we used different things to go in different. Steve Larmer was such a big part of that team, and that was Darren Turcotte and James Patrick went to Hartford in that 3-way. So it's all just a fantasy now of what could have and maybe would have happened. But I'm, as I said, honestly, I'm just so happy we got 1, because it's made my, changed my life in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
It's still look back on it and say it was, the greatest part of my career. But I will tell you this, and I don't know if you'll believe me or not, that when I was there for the 81 Stanley Cup with Minnesota at the Nassau Coliseum, and I was in the locker room right after the game, and then they won in Vancouver in 82, and I was watching it on TV because Cheapy Torrey didn't take me with him out to Vancouver. Especially the 81 Cup, like that was a thrill of a lifetime. To be a little guy, a little part of that, and like you had to pinch yourself. Like, how the hell did I get here? How did I go from being that guy to being now in the dressing room with the Islanders and the cup. And I got to take the cup for a day that year. And guess who I got it from? Butch Goring. I went to his house and got it from Butch. Butch still remembers that we did that. Anyway, so as thrilling as the 94 thing was, and the Canyon of Heroes and a sane Rudy Giuliani and all that other stuff back then, which is just, just an amazing ride. But that thrill of being with the Islanders when I was just a little tadpole within the organization was the thrill of a lifetime for me. I mean, it was so much fun to do that. And whereas the Ranger one was, thank God, because you feel like you're either going to win or they're going to kill you.
Yeah.
and so, you won and now your job was done, to getting that first one.
Yeah. So obviously the pinnacle right there. But you were on a trajectory from that 81 Cup with the Islanders. You were on a trajectory towards doing something on your own, on that kind of level. When you left the Islanders after the third Cup, right, with Jimmy D.
Yeah.
Right. So how did that come about? I know they offered him the job. You were close to him. He came to you evidently. Talk us through that, how that happened. Because I can remember that day because I was in my early 20s when that happened. And I remember saying, oh, geez, Jimmy D's leaving. I mean, we were really like in tune with this club. And to see him leave, we were hoping that didn't ruin things because we knew how important he was. And obviously we knew your name too, but tell us how that all went about. When Jimmy D finally got that job, you went with him because once you went there, you both had a hand in taking a franchise that was on the bottom again where you were and bringing it out and to down the road greatness after you left. But those were the people that you acquired and helped them acquire.
Well, the Norris family sold the Red Wings to the Ilitch family, Mr. and Mrs. Ilitch, who owned Little Caesars Pizza. They still do to this day. And I think at that time they had 300 stores. Now they've got 3,000 or something. I mean, they've grown like crazy. And they started to interview people for the GM job, and Jimmy got the interview. And of course, he was high on the hog at that time because he was with the Islanders. So won 3 Stanley Cups and in a row. And so he got that job, and then I knew that, he would want me to go with him, and I'd want to go with him because we were best friends. And when I told Bill Torrey that I was going to go with him, he says, well, I'm sort of surprised you're going to leave when Al Arbor's still on vacation. And I said, well, but Bill, to be honest, I probably called him Mr. Torrey. I said, I'm not going to be an assistant coach. He's not going to make me an assistant coach. And I said, I don't know how far I can go within the organization here, but I do know in Detroit I might get a bit more chances to do more things. And so I went with Jimmy, and you're right. I mean, that set up some of the things that I did that I'm probably most proud of in my career that haven't really been as recognized as they should be, because and they took more intelligence and work and finding a way to get things done than any of the things I did anywhere else. And so let me tell you what that is. In 1989, we drafted, and I was chief scout by then, and we drafted Mike Sillinger in the first round, Bob Bugner in the second round, Nicholas Lidstrom in the third round, Sergei Fedorov in the fourth round, Dallas Drake in the seventh round, and then Vladimir Konstantinov in the 10th round or 12th round. And unfortunately for Konstantinov, we all know what happened. He was in that car accident after the Cup in '97 and never was able to play again. He was crippled. But he was a hell of a player. I mean, he was a tough guy. But that draft has been called the greatest draft in sports history because we got so many good players. But the one guy that I really wanted, and I begged Jimmy, please let me take this Swedish kid. Please let me take this Swedish kid. Was Nicholas Lidstrom. Now, did I know at that time he was going to be as good as he ended up being? Of course not. I mean, or else you should have taken him first. But I did know he'd be an NHL player. And for him to go on and win 7 Norris trophies, was, and how many, 3 or 4 Stanley Cups? I guess 4. That's my proudest thing, is that, because that takes real talent to do that, to have an eye and to go all over the world and listen to people and find these guys and that is a real skill set that I'm very proud of. I'm proud of the 2 Calder Cups we won with Adirondack Red Wings in '86.
I don't think anybody knows about that either. I mean,
no, I know.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. And so we won those 2, and then we won a Calder Cup with New York in 2000 with the Hartford Wolfpack. So I actually won 3 of those. And then I won 3 Stanley Cups because the 2 were the Islanders, 81, 82, and then the one with New York. But I think it's the Adam Graves drafting, it's the Nicholas Lidstrom drafting, the Sergei Fedorov drafting, and recognizing talent, drafting young guys, and then them turn into stars. There's nothing better. There's no better feeling than that.
And I think I don't know if innovative is the right word, because you're drafting and you're not really creating anything new with regard to the draft. But it seemed that you and Jimmy at that time with the Red Wings, you started either you broke the door down or you started the ball rolling when it came to getting the Swedes, the Finns, the Russians. It seemed like you guys, there may have been 1 or 2, sprinkled around prior to when you guys really went at it there in the late 80s and built that team that wound up winning cups later on.
Well, how that happened was, so in around 84 or 85, I'm a 30-year-old kid, right, at that time. And the scout that we had going to Europe to the tournaments was an older guy named Alex Davidson in Detroit. And so I said to Jimmy, I'd like to go over. I'll go see these tournaments and stuff. And I had a blast going over there. I loved it. I was a young guy, and there was a lot of fun to be had. And the older guys, and I'm talking about going to Russia and going to Czechoslovakia, which was communist, and the older guys, they didn't really like it. It wasn't a lot of fun for them, but for a young guy, there was some fun to be had. And so, and the other thing that happened was my first trip into Stockholm, I needed a ride to the Elite League game. And so I called Central Scouting, the Finnish guy that was the head of Central Scouting in Europe. And I said, how do you get to the game? He says, well, I know a young guy, I'll have him pick you up. And the guy that picked me up was driving a taxi, but his name was Christer Rockstrom, the famous Christer Rockstrom now that drafted Lundqvist for the Rangers. We got those, he was the Nicholas Lidstrom guy. He called me and said, you got to see this kid. You got to come over and see him. And him and I became close buddies, and I'd go to Stockholm and I'd have a great time. He knew all the bars and all the places to go. And he was brilliant in knowing hockey and knowing all these different people. And he was a young guy. So that's what really started that. Jimmy never went to Europe himself, but he did give me the green light to go. And he did give me the green light to draft players from Europe. And so that's how that all started. And then when we left for New York, meaning me and Christer Rockstrom in 1989, one of Christer's friends took the role that Christer had with Detroit, and they kept on drafting great players. Like that's when they got Datsuk and Zetterberg and these guys. And so they had that history of being able to find these diamonds in the rough. But those were great years. I mean, I just really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed the fact that now in my life, I'm very proud of Detroit winning 97, 98, and then those other 2 cups, because I know I played a role in it. I think it took me until this part of my life to really look back and enjoy that because, I'm so competitive. I didn't want Detroit to win, even though I'd been there. Why would I want Detroit to win? I want to win. I don't want Detroit to win. So, but now it's really good. I hired Ken Holland as the Western scout, and he's gone on to have a great career. I'm sort of jealous because now he's in LA making millions. He was in Edmonton. But no, I hired him. He was our goalie on Adirondack Red Wings, and we weren't going to re-sign him. He was moving back to Medicine Hat, Alberta. And I said to him, well, our Western scout has gone back to Portland Winterhawks. Would you be interested in being our Western scout? And he took the job, and the rest is history.
Imagine that.
Great accomplishment, though, because that team, that organization dominated, even though they didn't win the cup every year. But like you said, late 90s and then again into the early 2000s, a little bit of a gap, but the entire time still dominating, one of the best teams in the league. And it's not like we were saying before, it's not easy to consistently stay at the top nowadays the way, the contracts are structured and things like that. So to be able to have that much talent and to get deep with talent and then continually keep adding on as time goes by and guys are getting older and replacing them with really good players and staying competitive. It's not too many teams have been able to do that in the modern era. Maybe the Red Wings, maybe Pittsburgh. They're just starting to see a little bit of decline now after maybe about 15 years. Yeah. So those are the types of teams and organizations that you hope your team, eventually evolves into. That's something that we would always want to. We always talk about hoping that the Islanders will eventually figure out how to do.
Well, you've got an opportunity this year with the first overall pick. Now, it's not a Connor McDavid, from what I understand. It's not a Mario Lemieux or Wayne Gretzky or something, but it is going to be obviously a really good player, and hopefully he could blossom into another Dennis Potvin, who's obviously their first overall pick from the past that turned that franchise around. Because once you get one of those guys, that attracts other really good players because they want to play with that guy. And so we'll see what this year brings, but it could, who knows, maybe it could be.
The Islanders are in a unique position by getting that first overall pick in a way, and they probably, I don't know if they didn't make up their mind yet or not, or they were still figuring it out, but they had so many holes to fill. They need scoring because their power play has been just horrible for the last 4 or 5 seasons. Even
bottom of the league overall in scoring.
They need scoring punch, but again, they also need that real, true number one defenseman that quarterbacks the power play, and also adds, a scoring punch and a little dynamism to the 5-on-5. So if you have the number one pick and you're looking at a Schaefer or a Misa or a Higgins or any of these other guys who, any of them could be going 3, 4, 5, and they keep jostling around. To have to say, what do we need more? Ray and I had talked about it. You look at it and you go, well, defensemen are a little more rare.
Mm-hmm.
Next year is going to be a deep draft. So supposedly you have 2 first-round picks. Do you lean towards the defenseman this time around, or do you just go? Do you go for the scorer, or do you look in the aggregate and you just say that guy actually is the best, so let's just take him? How would you look?
That's how we've always done it. Is who's the best player we can get at our pick, regardless of position. Now, if you're picking 21 and there's such a little difference between who's the 21st best and the 22nd best and the 8th, and it's any man's choice. Like, that's different. Then maybe you want to take the defenseman or you want to take the scoring winger or the grinding winger or the face-off man or so on and so forth. But I would always say when you're in the position that the Islanders are in, take the best player you can get. Take the guy that you think has the best shot at being a real impact player for your team. Because the Islanders aren't deep enough to turn down any position. You know, they need help everywhere.
That's true.
Well,
Like Steve was saying, the fact, and I've been saying this, right, over the last couple of podcasts, is that all things being equal, let's say, you know, you have the defenseman and you have the forward. Because it's not so common, and again, not to be flippant about it, but every draft is deep with forwards that are at the top of their game, at the top of the juniors. They're high-scoring guys. It's not so common that you see a defenseman that can be a top 6 scorer and or even your top 3 skater, right? So I've been saying, all things being equal, if you look at the top 3 guys and they're all equal, I was saying you kind of lean towards the defenseman because it's just not that common. You know how often you're going to come across that guy. If he's going to be able to score at a similar rate, similar pace, or at least be in that top 6 of scoring, you would want to lean towards that defenseman. But that's just my take, and I'm certainly no Hall of Fame.
Well, no, if you think that there's a defenseman that could be your number one guy, like let me tell you something, that to win a Stanley Cup eventually, you got to have a Dennis Potvin, you got to have a Brian Leach, you've got to have a Nicholas Lidstrom, you've got to have an Ekblad and a Seth Jones. You know, you've got to have a Bouchard, Evan Bouchard. You've got to have that number one great offensive defenseman. And then obviously you need a great centerman of strong guys, and you need a great goaltender. But that is a key element to a winning team, is that number one D-man. I mean, Raymond Bourque on Boston. We can go on and on. Rob Blake on the LA Kings.
Cale Makar nowadays, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love him. He is unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, Chris Chelios during his day when those guys can quarterback a team, and they're really important. So if there is a quarterback out there like that, and I don't know these kids, so I can't say. I agree with you. You sort of got to lean that way. The other thing that'll be interesting is, and I don't think this is going to happen, knowing the ownership of the Islanders and knowing the principles involved, do they prejudice for the Long Island kid? Do they give him more weight because he's from Long Island? I don't see them doing that, because they're not local owners that own that team. It's not like they're Long Island guys. John Collins and John Ledecky and certainly Scott Melkin, who lives in London. I don't think that's gonna mean anything to them. And besides that, once you get past picking that guy and making the fans happy, they're not happy if he's not the best player. They'll be like, what did you pick him for? Why didn't you pick the best player? You know, they'll soon forget the thrill of having a Long Island native.
Right. I mean, you hope they don't look at it, like you're saying, you look at it pragmatically. You don't want to look at it like, well, he's from Long Island, and if we don't pick him and he does well somewhere else, they'll hate us. You can't think that way. You have to go, you got to go blind really in there, knowing only the stats, all the scouting reports, the combine, how you come out of the combine. And honestly, right now, coming out of the combine, Schaefer is still like the number one guy.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the way they got to go. But they got a new GM, and I guess he'll decide how he wants to go about it.
Yeah. And speaking of that, pardon me, doubling back to your Islander days, if it's not too sensitive of a subject, when Charles Wang took over the team after years of mismanagement over there, I couldn't tell you how happy I was to hear that he named Neil Smith as the general manager. I think maybe a day or two before that, he had already announced who the coach was going to be, which is Ted Nolan. But can you tell us what the heck was going on there?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have an idea, the whole committee thing, and obviously you're not gonna go along with that if he would have told you ahead of time. Did he tell you ahead of time? Did he not?
Yeah.
What went down over there as far as you coming over as GM, and how did it not last?
Well, the thing that I'm always blaming myself about on this one was I didn't do my research into Charles Wang. I was doing TV for OLN. That was that first year of that TV deal. They were still called Outdoor Life Network and OLN, and before it became Versus. And we were doing the Carolina final with Edmonton when Charles started talking to me and calling me, and I did a couple of interviews with him, and he liked the way that I thought about the game and the different way I looked at it. I was really into psychological analysis of the young kids and seeing where their head was at and how their personalities were, and that seemed to intrigue him. But I didn't do my research into him, and I didn't do my research into, well, what's Milbury going to be when I get there? Like, is he still going to be around? And and he was, and I was so excited to go back and be in Bill Torrey's chair, where I'd grown up, and be part of the Islanders, and maybe go back and beat the Rangers now. And I was so excited to do that I think I didn't do my homework. And so I took the job, and I knew I'd made a big mistake right away, because the first meeting we had was at the hotel across the parking lot there, and Patty LaFontaine was there, which was fine. Ted Nolan was there. Mike Milbury was there. Brian Trottier was there, and the guy that ran the Bridgewater team, not the hockey part of it, but the business part of it, he was there. And everybody was in on talking about things that they should never have been talking about. Like, they were talking about who should we sign as free agents, and everybody's got an opinion. And I said, well, where's the scouts? Oh, well, we don't need them right now. I'm like, you can't do it like this. And then they were talking about who to draft in the draft, and they were part of that. Oh, and the amateur scout was there too, Joni Feltrin. And I'm like, you can't do it this way. You can't do this. And then there was other things that went on during those 40 days where I just would say to people, like, this is nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And then he said to me one day, what would you think if I told you that we should give Ricky, meaning Ricky DiPietro, a 15-year contract? I said, I'd say you're crazy. And so then I was going to meet with Rick Curran, the agent, and I was going to tell Rick Curran, we're going to do like 1 or 2 years, and that's it. Like, he doesn't make the playoffs. He didn't sign his qualifying offer. He's sort of in no man's land. We could really screw him if we wanted to. And before I could have that meeting, Charles comes in and says, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. And I'm like, because he knew I didn't want to do it his way. I wasn't going to do it like that. Like, there's no way I was going to ruin my reputation to be on a clown car, with these guys.
That's what it was.
It really was.
What was Wang's thinking about locking this guy up for that long?
Because he loved Rick DiPietro personally. He had a relationship with him. They'd been at America's Got Talent concert the night before. He fell in love with Yashin too. Like, he loved Yashin. I was talking to him one day at the practice rink, and he's looking at me talking, and then all of a sudden in came Carol Alt and Yashin, and his eyes just went right away from me, like I wasn't even there. It was just, I was nobody. He thought that Ricky needed that security, and that Ricky would play better if he knew he was going to be, if he knew he had that security. which is stupidity because everybody knows that that's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's pretty much
You
the
get a
opposite.
you give one of the three of us on this show right here a 15-year contract, our work ethic is going to go down the tube because we've got 15 years to sit around now. That's
Figure it out.
Yeah. So so eventually, you know, like that came to the blows. But I gotta tell you another funny story is, so my wife comes to pick me up at the Nassau Coliseum because I call her and I can make light of it now, but I was shook up about this whole thing. Like I didn't go to the Islanders to leave in 40 days. And I didn't do all the work on the free agents and the draft to turn around and leave. But at the same time, I wasn't doing things his way. So she comes and picks me up, and I get a call from EJ McGuire. You know him. He's on NHL Network.
Yeah.
And he says, Neil, is it true? Is it true? And I go, yeah, it's true. I'm leaving. I'm not part of it. No, not that part. I said, well, what are you talking about? He said, the part about they're going to name Garth Snow the general manager. And I start laughing, like in the middle of this thing, driving out I'm belly laughing. And I'm like, oh my God. I said, he saved me. They've saved me. Because I knew once you heard that, you'd know it's a clown car, that there's no way that Neil Smith could stay if there was even a possibility that they're going to name Garth Snow. Like that doesn't go together. So,
And
yeah, unfortunately,
Patty had left basically, I guess, for the same reason. I'm not going to ask you to confirm or deny, but it was around the same time, right? And
it's the same exact time. Yeah, and he said he said he couldn't be part of it with it being like that. He said you can't do that.
So it really came down to Ron really having that personal relationship thing kind of trumped everything, huh?
Yeah, and then what I didn't know was Milbury was putting a knife in my back every day that I was there.
What was his role? I thought he was gone once.
No, he was still around. I think he would have still been GM if Charles had his way. He didn't want, but I think it was Mike who wanted to step down, didn't want to do it, but he still kept getting paid. And he said at that arbitration that we had to figure out how much Wong had to pay me, he said he got up and testified that he told Charles right in front of me, he said this, anybody but Neil.
Didn't it seem? I'll talk to Ray first because from a fan's point of view, and you being on the inside, you can let us know how you felt. But Ray, do you remember when all this was going on? Didn't it seem like Charles had gotten, because the fans were calling for Milbury's head for years. He was there way too long, and it just appeared that Charles took Milbury, didn't want to let him go, figured out this little plan to keep him in the fold, and then maybe bring Neil Smith in to shut people up, but then pull that committee thing so this way Milbury would still have his hands on the franchise.
And we said it. Yeah, we said it. Many times during that period that the committee thing was probably something just to keep Milbury involved. I mean, like, shit. I mean, why not make him president, right? I mean, but they didn't, because they didn't want to give him a promotion when everybody wanted him gone, and it just seemed like it was Juan's way of trying to keep this guy around. And I think we all felt this, like we were just saying, like you were saying too, Neil, is that I think this guy just valued his personal connections more than he did the process and also the success of the team. I think he felt Juan came in out of nowhere. He got pulled in politically, and he was not a hockey guy, had no ties to anything in the NHL, and he needed to hang on to people who he felt close to, that he trusted, that did have that in, and Milbury was that guy. But yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I mean, we talked about it for years after that. We still talk.
I think Wong also loves sycophants. I think he just loved that. Like if you could kiss his ring, I mean he loved that, obviously, because Gar Snow, he ended up giving Gar Snow like a 5-year deal right when he was selling the team. So Gar Snow got paid up until last year by the Islanders. And so he sort of screwed the new owner coming in because he was saddled with Gar Snow's contract. Charles was just a bad guy. I don't care what anybody says. He's just a bad person. He didn't have any emails. He didn't have any trade. You couldn't have any trail of anything with him. I mean, he remember the thing that went down with Computer Associates, and his partner went up the river.
Yeah. He was a partner in the Islanders in the beginning too. Sanjay Kumar.
Yeah. But they got a lot better. Their ownership group now is really good. I think. I really think that this is the best the ownership group that they've had since Mr. Pickett.
And we've had issues with him too, the way he ran things.
Sure, because for 3 decades we've been waiting for someone who at least appears to care about the on ice product and how it affects the fans that follow and pay for it, especially nowadays where you're really paying for it. It's unbelievable. You know, I have 3 sons, and they're all grown men, but if they were kids now and I had to take my 3 boys to a game, it would probably be once a month if I'm lucky.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And those seats where I'm in the UBS club there, they're like $500 a pop up there for those boxes. It's incredible. But now it's all inclusive. The food is 5-star food. It's really a beautiful, beautiful place. But it's the same throughout the league. The ticket prices are astronomical, and I'm sure in the NBA, MLB, NFL, it's the same everywhere now. So
I went to a Met game last summer, and a friend of mine has a business, and one of his clients gave him 4 tickets to sit behind home plate, the Clover Club. So when you first walk in, you walk through these doors, and it's like walking into a hotel lobby on brunch day, where it was just unbelievable, the setup, gorgeous. And then you in and out, no waiting on the bathrooms. There was a few bathrooms in there. There was a bar. There was a liquor bar. There was hot dogs. You just grab them yourself, refrigerators, everything at your disposal. And then while we were sitting there talking, he says, "Do you want to know how much these seats cost?" I said, "Yeah, why not?" They cost over $500.
Yeah. Oh, I believe it because it's all inclusive.
Businesses, they can afford it, and that's cool. You can get it. But again, for the regular guy, it's a tough.
I have a friend that helps me with my insurance, and she works for the insurance broker that the league uses. And I said to her when this thing started with UBS Arena, I said, "By the way, I know you live on Long Island. Are you Islander fans?" And she says, "Oh my God, Neil." She says, "I'm a huge Islander fan. I grew up in Elmont. That's where I grew up." And I said, "Oh, that's great." I said, "Well, look, I'm going to get you and your husband to some games." So I gave them tickets to the UBS club, and they literally, I say this seriously, were almost crying. They said, "We would never be able to have something like this. We'd never get in this level to do this, Neil, if it wasn't for you." And I said, "Oh, no, yeah, that's great. I'm really glad." And I do get a thrill out of doing that for people. I love doing that because these are the people that should get a chance to see that kind of thing because they're fans. They're hardcore, hardworking people. And so for me to be able to give somebody that chance is really makes me feel good.
And doubling back to when you were on your way out with the GM thing, and true to form, you actually made more than a couple of really good moves that stuck with the Islanders and actually helped them along even during tough times. I mean, Kyle Oposo was your draft pick, right? And then you had Tom Pody, Brendan Witt, and you reestablished your Mike Sillinger connection.
Yeah. Right? And Chris Simon. We brought in Chris Simon.
Yeah. That was Ted Nolan's guy, right?
Nolan knew him from junior too and helped him out there. And I tell you, those guys, They stuck around for a while.
Well, they made the playoffs that year, if you remember, in the shootout right at the end there, but they still made the playoffs. And that was, I mean, I remember my friends at the Rangers that were still there saying to me that the Ranger brass had said that I built a good team for the Islanders for that year. You know, it wasn't going to last for very long, but for that year, it gave Teddy Nolan some things to work with. And so I was proud of that too, that they made it. And, you know, and Kyle Poso, I called him when he retired after last year's Stanley Cup. I got his number. I hadn't talked to him since the day I drafted him all through his career. I never talked to him. And that was really fun. And I congratulated him on his great career and the fact that he, you know, won the Stanley Cup. And I said, I think you could still play again next year. You know, I don't see why you don't play next year. And he was gracious and good, and he's in Minnesota now, back where he's from.
Yeah, he's definitely a fan favorite here, you know, and by the time he won, I think a lot of us were real happy for him too, just like you were.
Yeah.
You know?
What was your vision for the organization and that team when you came in? Because it was just such a mess for so long. And you came in and you made some bold moves right away. I don't know, did you bring in Ted Nolan or was he already there? I'm not sure.
That was Charles's decision to do that. And he told me, when he said to me, I want you to be the GM on the phone from Carolina, he said, do you want to know who the coach is going to be? And I said, what? I want to know. And then he tells me Ted Nolan. And Gary Bettman said to me in Carolina, because he knew that I was taking the job, he says, how's this going to work with him picking the coach? And I said, I can work with it. Because I just wanted the job. I wanted to go in. I wanted to reestablish myself. I love New York. I thought nobody's ever been GM of both teams. Like, this is going to be phenomenal. And I got to tell you that my wife said to me, we were at home, and she said, what's wrong? And I said, I don't want to go in there. Like, we were in Manhattan still. And she says, well, this is what you've always wanted. I said, I am so friggin' depressed. I can barely get out of bed. Because it was depressing to me to be in a shit show like this. Wow. And I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I can't. And so Wong played it to everybody that Neil Smith has to have total control or he can't be there. Well, that's not really true, but I got to be a GM. I can't be an assistant, like an assistant to the assistant to the assistant. So anyway, we turned the page on that. I still got this notoriety, though, of being the only guy to be GM of both teams.
You'll never be able to take that.
No, it's official. It's a fact. Even though there were no games involved, it's still factual.
Right.
Hey, like you said, put your stamp on it. Yeah.
Yeah, no question. I remember reading an article, fast forwarding to current times. It's actually last year. And I think we were hoping for some free agent signings. You know, we needed some help offensively, needed some help defensively, kind of like where we're at now. Lamoriello was still there. He signs Anthony Duclair. It was pretty much the only signing. And I read an article because I'm looking to see what other people's opinions are. Is there anybody else out there that may be rumored to be coming? And I saw Neil Smith's quote that the Islanders are stuck in park. Do you remember that?
No, that was on my podcast. So we previewed every game, every team, and we'll do it again this year. And when I came to the Islanders, I said to my partner off the show, I said, I'm not going to lie about shit on the Islanders. I'm not going to kill them, but I'm not going to lie. I can't be honest about every team and then not be honest about the Islanders. And what my thoughts really were was, I don't think they've improved at all. I said that I don't think they've improved. And I said, the one guy they signed, Anthony Duclair, I don't know the guy, but he's been on 9 teams in 11 years. And there's something wrong when you're on 9 different teams in 11 years. And I think that I was proven right by the way the season ended this year. Yeah. He had to take personal time off because he was in a snit about Patrick Waugh benched him or something. I don't know what it really was, but I mean, that wasn't a good signing. 4 years for Anthony Duclair. Like, nobody wanted to give him more than a month.
Well, that's, and totally agree with you. And not to get too deep into the last couple of years on the Islanders and what Lou Lamoriello had done, but totally agree. There was every year you're waiting, right? You're seeing that the team has had its struggles, particularly offensively. Not just the special teams, but the fact that they've just been in the bottom third and in the last couple of years, a total bottom of total offensive production. And what are they going to do about it? And nothing really. The guy kind of doubled down on the team that he had. And even so they get Duclair, in the offseason, and it's like, how much is that really going to help? Are they really addressing what they need to do? And then at the trade deadline, he trades Brock Nelson, gets a good deal back for him, but we find out that's only because he really wanted to re-sign Nelson, keep him there for another 3 years, and Nelson turned him down, so he had to turn around and make a deal. So you really wonder where the thinking was as to, like, when is it time to say, okay, this group needs to go and we need to start over again. And it just seemed like he just wanted to stay with the same guys, almost to like the point we were talking about before with Charles Wang, where, the guy just had personal relationships and wanted to stay with those guys because he felt comfortable. There's a lot of Islander fans that felt that. Lou Lamoriello felt the same way about a lot of the guys that we hear, and even some of the people that he brought in from the Devils organization in his previous tenure, coaches and other players and things like that things just never progressed. It just kind of stayed the same for whatever reason.
I think the most disappointing thing to me about the first 3 years of going to the UBS Arena was the fact that they got this beautiful building, probably the nicest in the league. Okay. And I would have, for the business, gone out in the summer and done things to get the fans excited to want to come back and want to be at the arena, want to get their season tickets, want to do advertising, want to get their suites. I would have tried to give them hope for the upcoming season. What does that mean? Well, it means maybe trying to get a name in there, a name guy, sign somebody that's going to excite everybody, do something that's going to make the Islander fans say, like, hey, you know what? We got a chance here. We got a chance. I don't know what I'm not saying chance to win the cup. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just saying we're going to be okay. We're going to be good. Didn't do any of that. Never did it. And the renewals went from 80% to 80% of 80% to 70% of that 80%. And the renewals just keep going down and down for the owners. And I found that extremely disappointing because, we all can see how great UBS Arena is, and it is, but now we're going into year 5. Okay, been there, done that. The first couple of years of an arena, you're going there to see the arena and to see an exciting team, right? You're not just going for the team when you have a brand new arena. You love going to the brand new. And I thought it was really disappointing that connection wasn't there at all from the business side to Lamoriello. He couldn't care less about the business side of it. And everybody knows that he was just like, nope, players aren't doing that. Nope, you're not allowed to do this. Nope, you're not allowed to do that. And that's archaic. That's the 80s. You can't be doing that today. And I don't know. We'll see what the future is going to bring now.
Yeah, well, we have that coming up. We have the draft coming up on the 27th. Are you going to be up north for that, or are you going to be still down there?
No, I'm going to be on the 27th of June. I'm actually going to be in LA. And the draft is decentralized this year, so everybody stays home.
Oh, okay.
It's like the NFL and the NBA where it's just a commissioner with the players and the agents.
It was a little different when you were drafted too, though, right? Not much hoopla back then.
No.
Nowadays, it's like a big production.
Extremely decentralized.
It's incredible now. I mean, I was at the one at the Sphere last year. That was outrageous, crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't think it's going to stay decentralized. I think they're going to go back to going to a location and everybody going there. It's saving them money by doing it this way.
You know, it seems to be working for the NFL. It's like a big Mardi Gras. You know, they do it in Nashville, and they have it's an amazing event. People want it, so why not do it? You know.
Yeah. So we'll see what the summer brings. I hope they are able to do things, as I said, to get the fans excited about their team and want to come and think that they've got a chance.
And then first you have the free agents, and then that'll be between a deal here and there maybe, or like you say, you know, with a free agent signing that actually helps the team and means something. I think, you know, that'll give the fans some hope. And then they should start calling people about tickets. Not after that 9-2 loss to the Rangers like they did last year. That was a little crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Islanders have the new GM, right? Matthew Darsh. Not sure how much you know about him. It's interesting that you mentioned about how Lou Lamoriello really had no interest in the business side of things. And it definitely showed in how the organization was not able to really progress the last few years. So it looks to us that John Collins has kind of stepped up into that business side of the hockey operations role, and that they've given Matthew Darsh the hockey operations only. And now that they, you know, I think have seen what needs to get done, it looks to us, and we've talked about it on a number of podcasts, that, you know, that's how it's going to be kind of moving forward, at least for now. Just not sure how much you know about Matthew Darsh, if you have any experience dealing with him, or what your opinion is of him as a guy coming in as a brand new GM.
Yeah, I don't know him at all. I've never met him. I know he spent those years with Julien Brisebois in Tampa. Obviously a good organization, the Tampa Bay Lightning. I can't give an opinion on him. I'm surprised that they would take somebody that they would hire somebody that's inexperienced. Then again, no name guy. Like it's, I was surprised at that, but you know, that it's their team. They can do it the way they want, right? I was sort of surprised, and to be honest with you, I was sort of, I know those guys, and I'm there every game, and they know me well, and I've got a background in the business, and I told them, I said I could help you guys, and I never heard anything back. So it's sort of, you know, and by saying that, I didn't mean anything. I wasn't saying you should name me this or that. I wasn't saying that. I just said, like, look, I'm here. I'm there. I can help you guys. I know I can. And for whatever reason, they don't seem to have wanted it. So good luck to them.
Well, listen, Neil, we really, really want to thank you for being on. You gave us just a lot of time. We know you're busy. We know you wear many hats. Thanks for coming on. Thanks. We hope to have you on again whenever you're available. You know, you're invaluable not only to the podcast world, but just to the public when it comes to the NHL and hockey in general. You're just so well versed in everything. You have that amazing history. To come on our little show, we can't thank you enough, and we wish you all the best with UBS and with the NHL podcast that you have, the wraparound. We're enjoying it, and we enjoyed the hell out of having you on the show. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, hopefully we run into you at a game one of these days.
Yeah, Ray. Well, you know, you, Steve and Ray, if you're at the UBS arena, come to the UBS club and just ask for me. Everybody in there, everybody knows me. Every security guy, everybody. So, yeah, I'll definitely be there. I really enjoy going there. I enjoy the fans. I enjoy the role I play, and this is fun. It's a bit of memory lane. I know this might seem odd to some people because, you know, I got that chance to be the Rangers GM I had to take it. Obviously, you don't turn something like that down. I was very successful there right from the first year. And then I get known as the Rangers guy, right? But my heart really, and I'm being dead honest with this, my heart has always been more Islanders, because that's where I started. That's who gave me a chance. And that's when I was looking up in awe at all these guys. And so, you know, to see those jerseys behind you and everything, I mean, it brings me back to those great days when I was so young and so excited to be part of something. And so I hope people will hear this and realize that, you know, I was successful with the enemy, but I'll give you one last laugh. So you guys know that Greg Gilbert was on that 94 team, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know Gibby from when he was a rookie with the Islanders, and I was with the Islanders. Gibby and I are the only two humans with both a Rangers and Islanders Stanley Cup ring.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We're the only two. But here's the funny story. I went out on the ice, and, you know, when you win the cup, you're out on the ice and you're grabbing everybody, and you're, you know, it's a love fest. Like, you're just, and I grabbed Gibby and I said, Gibby, can you believe it? We did it for these assholes.
That's awesome.
That's really, you can ask him. That's a God honest true story. Because when I saw Gibby, I saw the Islander guy, and, you know, we were Islanders together.
Yeah,
you know? And so
he was on that last Cup team, and he was on the 85 on the 84 team as well. And then he went to, he went to Chicago, I think, after that.
Yeah. And then he bumped around a little bit. But anyway, guys, thanks for having me, and we'll talk soon. Good luck with the show, and get everybody to subscribe to NHL Wraparound. That's all I ask. Just try to get people to subscribe. We need numbers.
We'll put it out there. So do we.
Okay.
So if you talk to anybody, tell them about IFAN.
Okay, bud. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, Neil. Appreciate it.
Be well.
Take care.